This episode is sponsored by Property Filter. Find great deals faster.
Hello and welcome to the Financial Freedom Podcast, sponsored by us at Property Portfolio Building. This podcast is designed by real people on their journey to achieving financial freedom, and we'll focus on people who've either already attained it, who are joining us on that journey, or maybe a specialist topic that can help you build your technical knowledge to achieving and maintaining that financial freedom. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome back to the Financial Freedom Podcast. Today is one of our 6-round episodes where we interview someone who has either achieved financial freedom or on their journey to achieving financial freedom. Today, we would like to welcome Sobia Ahmad to the show. Sobia is a good friend and client of ours and has spent 20 years in the medical profession working as a dentist, where she has grown and sold some dental practices, which gave her some initial capital to then invest in some other schemes like property and some other investment strategies to help achieve her financial freedom. So welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim and Phil.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Thanks for coming along. So we always just like to start the show with just a bit of background about yourself and, you know, your story, where you grew up and, you know, some interesting things you've done across your journey.
Okay, so I'll try and be brief. So mine's a really typical Asian backstory, which someone of my generation and heritage would definitely be able to relate to. I am a child of immigrants. My father came to this country in the 60s from the Asian subcontinent looking for a better life. He was a very clever man. He went to university. So he settled in Newcastle upon Tyne. Went to university, was a biomedical student, but couldn't finish his degree, didn't have the money, needed to support a family. So when we came along, me and my siblings, education for him was critical. He had himself a very successful business in the Northeast. It was a cash and carry
How many
business.
siblings have you got, sorry?
I've got 2 younger brothers.
2 younger brothers.
But it was all about education.
Yeah.
And when I say education, you could only either be a doctor, a dentist, or a solicitor. So I chose to be a dentist. Well, when I say chose, of the 3 choices.
When you say that, what do you mean? Is that
It's a very Asian thing,
Right.
You understand it. I'm sure if there are Asian listeners.
As in your parents were telling you that they were the options, or is that what you thought the options were?
No, it didn't have to be said, but it was pretty much implied. I understood.
Yeah.
And being the first child, the eldest child, we are, and I've done a lot of therapy around this actually, eldest children are very responsible and rule followers. Yeah. That's just by nature what we are. Conscientious, determined, hardworking, high achieving, but we don't break the rules. And that was the rule. So of those 3 options, I chose, dentistry.
Right. So we've got to the point. So you've decided to go the dentistry route for your education, basically.
Yeah.
But before that, what was it like growing up in this your family up in Newcastle from a family?
A very stable, loving background, but you know, as I say, my father was very hardworking, so really profound work ethic was instilled in all of us. You had to achieve. So and
academically
do well.
achieving.
Yeah.
Really
it was
important.
all about academic achievement, which is strange because he grew a very successcul business. But
so did you get really good results in your things like GCSEs and things like that?
Yeah. All A's.
All A's.
All A's. And that was really, well, it was expected, and that's what you did. And it's rather strange because I'm different with my own children.
Yeah.
But that was, I think that's the mentality of a person who's an immigrant and faced hardship. They want their children to do well because you love your children and you want them to not have the same struggles that you have. And I think for my parents, they felt that could be achieved if we were educated
they didn't have the
and went into professions that would provide us with stability. So I know where they were coming from. And
was your thought pattern, so you know, was the higher grades I got, the better achieved at, say, school, university, that was my line to be more successful, basically? Was that the key thought pattern, or how was it thought about at that age?
No, I think you've really hit the nail on the head. That's what I thought. It's all about I was competitive. Well, still am competitive. Yeah. It was about getting the best results and doing really well and not letting them down.
And
Yeah.
what? So in your mindset then, so you mentioned something that I just picked up on it straight away, which is, I'm not the same with my children. Tell me why. Tell me about that.
Again, you get to a point in your life where you look back and you think and you realise that perhaps everything your parents did wasn't 100% right. It wasn't coming from a bad place at all.
Yeah.
Because I have to understand where they came from. And I come from a very different place. I grew up
So
with...
times change as well, don't they? So what they thought was right at the time may have been right at the time, or they meant right at the time.
They definitely meant right at the time. I mean,
Yeah.
I was a loved child. We were very lucky. We had parents who loved us
Yeah.
and wanted the best for us. But I think I am in a different place. I didn't have to have the struggle necessarily that they had. So for me, I've told this to both my boys. I've got 2 teenagers, one who's actually doing his A-levels and he's applying to university. I've really said to him, I just want you to be happy. I don't want you to... We have never imposed our will or told him you can...
So you haven't been as strict to say like you
not
have
in
to
that
study on
sense.
these times, you have to get these results or things like that.
I have expectations, and I've told him that you need to work hard and you get good results, and he has had good results. But I've never said I want you to do medicine or dentistry. So I'm a little bit disappointed to now say that he wants to apply for medicine. But that's not been... I can rest easy knowing that that's...
He's chose it himself.
It's his choice, and if he doesn't like it, that's down to him.
Yeah.
So.
Do you feel maybe, because this is something I've had as well, which is my dad worked hard, but he wasn't necessarily the most educated man, but he was an insurance underwriter with Zurich. So it was a hard job.
Yeah.
And he was very keen on the education that we got and things like that. And I've been less so. And kind of, and I'm going to put this out there, it's kind of because I know that whatever happens to them, I will have done something in advance where they can fall back on that in the future. So for me, he couldn't do that for me.
Okay. And that's unusual because my father did that for us because the business he created was such a successful business.
Right, okay.
But he still was very much about, he didn't want any of us to go into the business, and we didn't.
Right.
So I've got a brother who's a medic, and my youngest brother went to Oxford. He was very clever. He did PPE, politics, philosophy, economics. He went to Oxford. So we were never involved in the business. My father's passed away, so I can't ask him the question.
Yeah.
Why were you so focused on us and you didn't want us in the business? I just think a lot of it came down to the fact that he really struggled. This country in the 60s, it was a tough life. There wasn't, I'm going to bring up the word, if it's okay, I don't want to, I know this is not a political podcast, but there was racism. He faced
there
it.
is still racism
There
now,
still is
so
racism.
it is obviously a lot worse.
But those riots a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I know this is not a political podcast, but if you don't mind,
it's relevant.
I will share.
It's relevant to you.
I will share.
And even in because I was an 80s kid, in my primary school there was one non-white ethnic person. There was one Indian heritage child, a brother and a sister in the school.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And the interesting one is I am an actual migrant. You're not. You're
I'm born
you're
in
a second
this country.
generation.
Yeah.
But
you're white.
But no one ever says to me, like, people talk to me about the issues of migrants. Things. I'm a migrant.
I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to raise that.
No,
but
you're
it's
fine.
colour.
Yeah.
It's colour. We're not colourblind.
And yes, I've got some blood, that's native to this
I think we
country
need
a
to
long
get rid of the
time ago.
Aussies. I really do. I think they're taking. There's too many of them. Yeah,
taking over the country.
Yeah.
So I am going to be a bit political. Actually, those riots a couple of weeks ago, I was for a day or so. I was a bit frightened. I didn't want my boys to go out, and then I was really angry. Because can I just tell you what my cousins and my siblings have now gone on to achieve? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Can I say that?
Yeah.
So I'm a dentist. So my father, when he came to this country, his 2 brothers followed. Okay.
Right.
So I grew up with cousins. So there's 8 of us in total.
From Pakistan.
Yes. Yeah. Although he was born in India, but then there was partition. So
Right, okay.
effectively he had to move because the partition happened.
Yeah.
So I was brought up with all my cousins. Brilliant, lovely family. There's 8 of us. 3 of us are medics.
Yeah.
3 of us are solicitors. That brings us to 6.
Yeah.
And we've got 2 dentists. So have we not contributed to this country.
That's a very
One of
good
my
contribution.
cousins, who is a doctor, he's the leading ophthalmologist in this country who does stem cell research. So he's restoring people's eyesight. So a few weeks ago, when those riots happened, I was actually really, can I swear?
Yeah, of course, can you?
I was really pissed off.
Yeah.
I
I
made
know a
my
lot worse.
contribution.
We won't
and
be
I
on the
don't-
BBC,
Oh, okay.
so you're all right. Yeah.
I was actually, I've only ever heard really about these riots from some other people because I just don't tune into the news for this
Well, I watch
reason.
the news too much.
just for
mainstream.
depending on when you're listening to this.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to be open here. I don't follow the news. So, can you tell me? What actually do you think this was about? So we've just had a new government. So Labour's just come in, and then
What do I feel this is about? So I think that lots of people quite rightly are unhappy with their lives. And I understand that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we've had crisis after crisis in this country. But I think when we start demonizing a group of people, it's really lazy and it's really easy and it really plays into the hands of people who want to divide people. You know,
People want simple answers
Exactly.
to complex
Complex-
circumstances
yeah.
and scenarios.
Yeah.
Is that a way to put it?
If we stopped the illegal immigrants, of which, by the way, it's a really small proportion of the amount of immigration that happens in this country, but yeah, okay, we should stop it. It's really not going to change outcomes for people in this country because there are bigger structural issues
Yeah.
that aren't being addressed. But it's really easy to blame me because I'm brown
Yeah.
and I've taken your job. Well, no, actually, I've not taken anyone's job. My father worked very hard, educated me, and I have contributed to this country and to the economy and
Oh, a huge
continue
amount,
to
and
do so.
It wouldn't.
Yeah.
The country wouldn't be in a position it is now.
No.
But like the
so
thing,
I don't apologize for myself.
yeah.
Okay, but I'm really
Do
annoyed.
you know what's really challenging, Toby, is the fact you have to think about these things.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't even have to think about this as a problem.
No, you
Yeah,
don't
right.
because you're not my colour.
Yeah, no, I know, and that's to me that's not acceptable. You know, why can't you just get on with your life? You know,
And I've never, in my job, to be fair, I've never faced overt race. Maybe I've been lucky. I went to a really nice school. I was brought up in a nice part of. So maybe I've not faced actually racism. I don't think, not overt racism. And when this happened, I'm not suggesting that I was facing it, but I felt I was uncomfortable. I really was uncomfortable. And there were a couple of days I didn't want my children to go out. It was the summer holidays.
This again has missed me by. So like I don't even understand. Like when you're saying that these things are happening 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago, obviously I knew there was some protesting and some arrests. And I
live in Bramall, and
Right.
Cheadle Mosque is literally down the road. And it was Friday, and my boys, not always, but sometimes go to Friday prayers.
Okay.
Just do. My son goes with some of his friends from school, and on that Friday, I didn't let him go.
And there were
So-
riots in Cheadle.
Well,
there
well, there's lots
protests
of.
against religious.
Well,
institutions.
mosques were going to be targeted, you know, and they were being, you know, it was a focal point of something that was going to be targeted, and I didn't want to let them out for 2 days.
Right.
And can't be right. That can't be right or acceptable. But then again, I understand that people have real grievances. But it's like what you say, when you distill those down into a really simple thing, it's not simple, and the solution is not simple. And getting
Yeah.
rid of me from this country is not going to. Well, there's going to be one less person looking after your teeth for
Yeah,
a start.
absolutely, yeah.
The way
It's
the way I
really-
look at it is
I'm sat here with toothache, so please don't leave. You know.
globalization has happened. Obviously, the British Empire were the main drivers of
Exactly.
it. Because I look at it and I go, I've got, I think, Norwegian, Dutch, Irish, Scottish,
Blood.
English
Yeah.
blood, and I was born in Australia,
Yeah.
and that was because of
Mine's Irish. 100%.
the British Empire and the
Yeah.
traveling around the world and everything like that. So I find it unusual when people talk about globalization and migrants and all these sort of things. It's just
I don't want to make the problems. There are problems. There are huge problems. But when we demonize people and when we look at people and blame things because of the color of their skin, I don't think that helps anybody.
So we're talking in the main. I'm guessing the main concept here is an anti-immigration.
It was.
Flavour
Yeah,
to this
it was
protest.
definitely. But in that, if someone comes to me, they're not going to say to me that because of the color of my skin, they're not going to say that they're going to just see me as someone who's not of this country. Although I was born here, so it affects me, you know, because you can't by looking at me say, am I an immigrant? You know, you just assume I don't look at you and think, you're an immigrant until you open your mouth, Tim. And I hear the accent. Do you know what I mean? So
No.
colour is massively
Because my
important.
big example is when the Brexit vote was happening and everyone's talking about what are you going to do, who are you going to vote for?
Yeah.
And I talked to them, I'd be like, oh yeah, no, we need to curb the immigrants. So I'm gonna vote leave. And I'm like,
I don't have
no,
an
I'm an
issue.
immigrant. Like,
Yeah, you're an- like-
why are you telling me this? Like, what
look-
do you want to stop me coming in or what?
We need to address the issues, but they're way more complicated than just what was happening 2 weeks ago. That's all I'm saying.
It just goes to show though, because I deliberately don't watch the news.
I probably watch too much.
And
Yeah, I don't as well, so I'm not.
so apologies that we're not.
Oh no! Look, this is a podcast about financial freedom. So
Deliberately, I don't watch the news because of the antagonistic nature of it, and because of the problems that exist in society, and the fact that we're talking about financial freedom is trying to help people to get towards
Yes.
a goal where they can.
So I think where the news has got to a mainstream state is that they know they need to generate clickbait and fear.
Fear is one of those.
yeah.
Drama, all those sort of things
does
get
it.
more
The
attention.
emotional energy that you're gonna give to something like that, you could give to something else.
Absolutely.
You know, which is
Absolutely.
furthering yourself, educating yourself, and getting towards something that is important to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Great. Well, it's a great lead on then to our next question. I think.
Okay.
Good discussion. So yeah, what we talk about on the Financial Freedom podcast is that financial freedom, or that terminology, means different things to different people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what my question is for you is, what is financial freedom to you?
Okay.
And where are you on that journey?
Okay, so it is very personal and it's very different for everyone. But for me, financial freedom was the ability to buy back my time.
Yeah.
right?
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time is our most precious commodity. I can't buy any more of it, and it's finite.
Yeah.
And I had a very big birthday this year. Gentlemen, don't ask me how.
Okay.
And that really,
All of my brain's doing now is ask the question, ask. You told me not to do something and I can't think about anything
I
else.
was thinking the exact same thing.
it
What do we
was. Do you want me to?
Use up to you. You sure? We will.
50.
50. Right. Very good.
That's a milestone.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe I'm going to have another 50 years on this planet. So I have lived more than half my life.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
it.
sobering.
Yeah.
I don't
Maybe,
know,
maybe not.
for
but-
you two young folk.
Well,
it's-
he's a bit older,
he's
but,
not,
yeah.
but,
Yeah.
it's a really sobering thought. What did I do with the time that I had? What did I do with it? I haven't got that much time left. Sorry, I hate to be all, but that has really, really consumed me.
I think it's
that thought this year.
absolutely relevant. I think
Yeah.
it's
really
not, and
important.
it's the sobering factor is that people spend, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, and I've mentioned this to people ask, people spend their entire lives doing one thing, and then they absolutely, when something happens and they lose that purpose or they haven't got another plan,
Yeah.
they go through a massive trauma. And anything can trigger that. They call it, some people call it a midlife crisis, later life crisis. You call it whatever you want. Ultimately, it's loss of purpose and loss of direction. You know, that's what it is. My father was the same. He's a deeply religious man. I'm not. And when he retired due to ill health, and his family had grown up and moved out, and he was, he'd lived over half his life, 100% had done that. He went through a massive issue, and he hadn't done the thing that I'm trying to do. So, which is create a purpose that I can actually go beyond that retirement date to still live that purpose and still never retire in a way. But at the same time, it's knowing what have I done? And it is sobering. So I actually only made the decisions at 38 that I was going to do something about it. I know people that are doing this now at 20. We interviewed a young man called Finn, saying he's already on the journey,
Finn,
right?
he was my mastermind. Yeah.
So I don't think it matters on the age that you start to do something. I just think it matters that you start, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there are huge achievements you've had, from
to be fair,
your
yes.
dental career and things
So-
like that. You need to be proud of in your family, things like
Yeah,
that. But sometimes you just need to reflect and look
So
at
have you
those
done the
positives.
maths then? What is your time? What is the cost of your time? Have you actually sat there and gone,
Oh,
this is the
wow.
cost of my time?
Gosh, that's really... No, I haven't. But I've got most of my time back. So that's... Oh, do you mean what figure have I got in my mind in terms of what do I need to get me that
Not
time?
necessarily the
Well,
figure. I just
So how much time have you bought back? Is that a good question for now?
I've brought back exactly a really good balance of time.
Yeah.
I can talk about how I split what I do with my week and stuff, but I've got the time now that my children...
And also why it's important to you that time.
Well, that time is... I'm not going to get it back again.
Yeah.
And anyone who's got young children, and you're doing really well there, Tim, to spend that time with them. I didn't spend that time with mine, so I have some guilt issues there.
No, same.
But I look back on it and I'm reconciled to that, because when your children are babies, as long as you feed them and love them, and they know you're your primary caregiver, you can kind of palm them off to nursery and to grandparents. And I did a lot of that because I had a business, and my focus was the business. Now that I've got 2 teenagers, they actually need me more. There's all sorts of stuff going on in their lives. And before I was just there for them, but now I'm present, as in I am emotionally and mentally there, because I'm not thinking about the business that I sold. That can be consuming. I mean, you guys are growing something, and it can be consuming. Yeah, all consuming. So yeah, I've got that. I do.
But it can be as consuming or not as consuming as what you make it.
And maybe I didn't. Maybe I was too consumed by it. And my mum's got
or it evolved, or it happened, or were you strategic? Sometimes you can be strategic with it, and sometimes it just sort of evolves or happens out of control. So
I think mine was probably the second. It just grew to something that it was taking up more and more and consuming more and more. And I know this is a bit of a cliche, but then COVID happened. Yeah. And in COVID, I was sat in the practice. I think Boris Johnson, did he come up on the screen? I don't fully recall.
He did every night.
He did every night. Yeah. But in terms of, we had an email from the NHS saying, right, that's it, you shut.
Yeah.
I've never. So that was it. So one day we were working, and then and the next day we were closed. I had some time at home, which I don't really remember ever really. If I look back, I don't remember having
time to think and
time
reflect.
To really think. And in that time, I really realized I did not want to go back to what I was doing. I didn't want to go back to it. I think you're on a treadmill. It's such a cliche, but you're on a treadmill. But because you're on it, you're just on it, aren't you? You don't stop. And I stopped for months because we couldn't practice.
Absolutely. You're either forced to stop, or you have to take the time yourself to stop.
And I wouldn't have taken the time. It's not it's not in my nature to just stop. So I stopped. And when I stopped, I thought, I really don't want to go back. And that's when I decided in 2020, I had the last practice, and I thought, I'm selling this. Yeah. I don't want to do it. I don't mind doing the dentistry, but I don't want. I want to sell and see what else I can do. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because running a business is hard. Yeah. Even when you're an expert in something like a dentist, right? So it's the not.
Well, the dentistry was easy. It was the business. It was managing staff and so many regulations.
Profit and loss and everything. Compliance.
Yeah, that's not easy. I mean, I can do the dent. I've been doing dentistry for 20 years. I could have done that. Yeah. With my eyes closed. That was the easy bit. It was the other bit. And I suppose I could have got someone in to do that and all of that. But actually I just thought, no,
So how many hours a week were you working when you were working in the dentistry?
Oh God. So clinically I was still doing 2 or 3 days a week. So they're pretty long days, and it was intense. I mean, I did quite a lot of complex stuff. I've done implants, I did cosmetic dentistry. So, you're dealing with big cases. That's takes it out. That's, if you do a good job, that's always mentally, that's exhausting. And the rest of the time, still working on the business. There's still things that needed to be done, even when I'm not actually there doing the dentistry. You know that yourself. There's always, and you can delegate. Of course you can. Yeah. And maybe I was not good enough at delegating.
Yeah, or you hadn't developed the skills, or you hadn't learned the skills to be able to do that, which is understandable why you're running on the treadmill. Yeah.
Do you know the hardest thing is knowing that these things have to be done, but still taking the time for yourself to say it can be done tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's really hard as a business owner.
Yes. Because the buck stops with you. It's your responsibility. It's your money that's in there. God, no one cares about it as much as you're going to care about it.
No,
in my experience, no.
They never will.
No.
Right.
I mean, and again, it goes back to childhood. I had a father who worked 6 days a week.
Yeah.
He, even at the point where the business was fine and could have been run, he was in there because at 6:30 in the morning he'd start.
Yeah, it became that was his life, and everything associated, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So you've achieved your financial freedom by your definition, buying back your time.
My definition is that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I want to know is what strategies have you used to achieve that goal of buying back that time?
Absolutely. So I mean, when I sold the last practice, I had a decent chunk of capital.
And that was 2020.
No, that's when I decided. It took a year for everything. Okay. So 2021 is when I finally handed over the keys to someone else. I had a chunk of capital. I already had a stocks and share portfolio, and that was being managed. So the only other asset class I really knew anything about or thought about was property. I was very clear at the outset, and this hasn't changed for me, but I did not want to create another business.
So you wanted it as passive as possible.
As passive as possible. And this is not right for everyone. And my circumstances dictated that I could do this because I had access to the capital. So there's whole sorts of sexy things out there that people are doing, and I really admire that. But I didn't really want HMOs. I'm still thinking I might change my mind, and we might do one really big one towards the end of my property journey. But
let me tell you about a deal I have.
But I was really clear, and although I've kind of tried not to be seduced by other things, I'm still really clear that single lets was just what I wanted. That's what I have. I'm still building that portfolio because it's cash flowing nicely, but I've kind of also have cash flow from other things that have come to me indirectly through property, which we could
other investment strategies.
Strategies. But in terms of a property strategy, guys, it's been single lets.
Tell us a bit more about the other strategies you use as well.
Okay, so I have.
If you like to, so.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And again, these things wouldn't have come to me if I hadn't opened my eyes up to property. And I did Simon Zushi's 1 year mastermind. And that leads on to sort of the SaaS environment. And that's a really exciting environment, actually.
Yeah, so just for everyone listening, if you don't know, SaaS is self-administered pension scheme.
Yes, it is. You can hold lots of different things in that. You can hold commercial property. You can do trading. So actually, from property, I started doing options trading, which I've been doing now for nearly 2 years and very much love it. And also
that was on the back of Jeremy Downing's training.
Started with Jeremy's and Jeremy came to Jeremy through Simon's because he spoke at that, and I was looking to do something a little bit different. So options trading, and also through SaaS, I haven't been doing it, but I've given money to a company that does Forex trading using a bot, so it's automated. So to be very clear, these are higher risk strategies and your capital's at risk, but I think you should follow the investment pyramid, of which I have a picture. So at the bottom of that pyramid, have all your stable stuff. So if I'm giving advice, have property. Oh, if you want to be really, really safe, have a bit of cash, have some government bonds, because hopefully the government's not going to go bust. Then explore property, okay? And I'm still mostly invested in that. But at the top of that, I'm more than happy to put cash into the trading.
So what you're saying is you've got an X amount of capital to invest. You're saying you put a certain percentage in that
the low risk
strategy, a certain amount in that middle risk strategy, which you're saying is more like property. And then you're saying the top end, a smaller
you need
percentage.
a small amount because your returns are so much higher.
Could be things like Forex,
options trading,
maybe crypto. I don't know if you invest in crypto.
My husband has invested in crypto because he thinks he's going to become rich.
Higher risk stuff, could involve investing in a business or something, because obviously businesses can do well, but they can also go bump. So
and that percentage in your mind, you've got to think, if I lost that, is that going to sting a little bit, or is it going to really
The other thing I've been thinking a bit about over time is like you've got investments or assets that are quite liquid, as in you can liquefy and get the cash quite quickly.
Well, the bots, the trading,
which could be things like gold, stocks and shares, bots. Obviously, the issue with the stocks and shares and the bots is that depending when you're selling, it could have gone up and down. Gold's a little bit more stable, but yes, it can go down at certain times when stocks are doing really well, etc. But then you got property in the UK; it's not as liquid.
Well, we've had this
really
conversation.
Good asset, but to liquefy it and sell it,
you can't sell.
It does take a bit of time, especially if you're not.
And you can't sell half a house. Can you? You have to sell a whole house, so it's limited, but I'd still say that's where the majority of my sort of investing is. And like I say, at the top of that pyramid is the stuff that if it went bump, I've enjoyed the returns and I wouldn't lose too much.
And out of interest, because you have invested in quite passive type strategies. How many hours a week do you So you have to spend time on your investment portfolio?
On my property portfolio. So if I'm really honest, not much, simply because at the minute I still manage my single lets, but I've got found in the last year, a really good guy who does all the maintenance, and he's really, he gets there, he does the job, and he just bills me.
Yeah.
How often does that happen? Let's say last month I got a call about an issue in a property. That happens pretty infrequently because when I bought them, I refurbished most of them.
Yeah.
So they're not old
Yeah,
refurbishments.
you know that
they're pretty new.
there's
So I
not any
know
huge
there's
maintenance.
no. So I'd have to say.
And you raised a really good point before because, you know, a lot of people in the property space just oversee the traditional, you know, single let family property. But
Yeah.
it's a proven model, it's lower risk, and you know, it is a real asset because me and Phil talk about, like, we talk about assets in the top class, and you
Yeah.
can keep that forever.
We talk about the wealth hierarchy, which is cash flow, profit, and assets.
Yeah.
So Sobia, without probably planning this, has almost completed that journey in a way because your cash flow.
I think without knowing that triangle, you planned that way because you just didn't
I
want
knew
to
what I
spend too
didn't
much
want.
time on it. Yeah.
So I knew what I
so you
didn't.
had your cash flow, which was your role
Yeah.
that you paid you clinically, and your business.
Yeah.
That also, any surplus cash flow was profit, and then you sold your business,
Yeah.
which was profit, and now you've converted that to assets.
Yeah.
So that is literally the wealth hierarchy, which is what can you do to generate in more cash flow to build profit, or what can you do to then build cash flow and then sell for profit, and then that profit you invest
buy
into
assets.
assets, which then replaces any income requirements you may have.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the wealth hierarchy that we all attain to.
Okay.
So without deliberately, to some degree doing that, it sounds like you've not only got to the asset level, but you've split your assets
Other different
into triangles and gone for like the low, medium, and high risk strategies. But even in the high risk area, you're talking about the fun stuff, right? Which is it's the stuff you can click on and do a little bit of trading and feel like
or you
go
check on
then
my phone and
go check your phone and then go and watch Wolf of Wall Street, come back and then
so I'm not sat in front of a screen.
Stop the podcast now. This episode is sponsored by Property Filter. Property Filter is the #1 property tool for today's property professional. It brings in all the data points and sources from all the property portals and auction sites into one convenient place. Then you have the option to overlay all the clever strategies found in the Property Filter blueprint to find motivated sellers faster. Now, we use it on a daily basis. It saves us over 80% of our time when looking for properties. And if that sounds like something that you want in your lives, please go to register.property-filter.co.uk/PPB, which is the discount code for this podcast. You will get 2 weeks free and a discount on your first month. That's it from me. Back to the podcast.
It does lead on to the next question then. So what's a typical day for you at the moment?
Okay, so a very typical day. I still do dentistry 2 days a week, which surprises a lot of people. I do that really for my mental health more than anything.
For stimulation, to keep stimulated with your mind? Or?
Well, I tried. When I sold my practice in 21, it was summer 21, and I had 6 months off. And I swear to God, by the end of that 6 months, my husband was like, "You need to find something to do." So there will be people out there who've got millions of hobbies. I need to perhaps find some more hobbies. So at the minute, I love the structure. I work on a Monday and I work on a Wednesday. And so that's and in between that,
that's set in the calendar. You know,
that's set. Those are my 2 days that I work.
I just feel like that type of work, because you were busy with the business as well, it became more of a burden than perhaps you intended it. So sometimes, like when people run practices, really, they're running the practice because of the love of a clinical thing. And they want to do a really good thing for people. And then when you reverse engineer that, actually, I just really love the clinical part. And then you've spent all this time and training and energy and becoming an expert in your field. And it's created this purpose for you. And then you sell your business and you go, well, that's me done. And then very quickly you're like, actually, the thing I loved
was still the patience.
And you can go back and do that.
But you don't want to spend too much of your time on it. So
I want
2 days a week is a
when I leave the prison, leading on to where I'm working, when I leave the prison, I don't worry about the patients. It's done.
Yes.
And,
or you don't have to worry about paying bills or compliance or all those sort of things you mentioned before.
So we're talking about prison because that's where I'm now working, guys.
I
work in a prison. Now, when I say that to people, say, "God, work in a prison, what do you do?" I'm like, dentistry. People don't assume that there's a healthcare facility in a prison.
No, there is. Great healthcare facility.
Yeah, very good healthcare facility.
It's needed, obviously.
Which prison, are you allowed to name the prison or no?
I suppose I am. Style.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so it's down the road. So it's a nice, easy 10-minute commute. It is, it's mixed. So we've got high category.
Is there a nice restaurant there?
It's a lovely restaurant there. That's where we go sometimes
Clink,
for
is it?
lunch.
Really?
The Clink, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
actually
it's really
run by
nice.
the.
Is that what it's called? The Clink?
It's called the Clink. It's brilliant, actually. I think there are a few things that we do really well in this country. So I've got patients who work in the Clink, and if you speak to them, they are so inspired, actually, that I can tell that they're not going to reoffend, as much as I can tell anything.
Yeah.
Because there are professional chefs who go in. So it's such a brilliant scheme. There are professional chefs who give them, teach them the skill.
Yeah.
And the cooking is amazing. I mean, the food is amazing. There's one patient who obviously I can't name, but I just know I don't think she'll reoffend, because I think
Her mindset's
so much
shifted.
her mind's because someone has valued her and has helped her and has nurtured her, and she's got a skill and she loves what she does, that she will, when she leaves, she will be helped and she'll find a job in that sort of environment.
Yeah.
And I think that's set her up now for life. So that's such a great
That's so
thing.
good.
Yeah, so good. And we don't do enough of that. We don't rehabilitate. The reoffending rate
Comes back
is
to our earlier
ridiculous.
point about purpose and things like that, because it doesn't matter whether you're in prison, out of prison, what
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
doing. Everyone needs to be valued and have a purpose.
If you just wanted to do 2 days a week dentistry, I'm sure there's plenty of practices.
I could have gone to a private, but been there, done that.
So was your thought pattern? I
Interesting.
can go and hopefully.
So I've just crossed out, get a discount off Sobia for the veneers that I want. There you go.
Well, I thought I'm not doing it for the money, because it's not very well paid.
Yeah.
But it's a massively high need population. I go there and I feel like I've done something really useful and helpful.
Yeah.
And I leave there actually with a real sense of gratitude for my own life. And I don't mean to sound, oh my God, my life's amazing, but I think a lot of how I have turned out is because I had loving, caring, invested parents.
Yeah.
And in that environment, I meet women. It's an all-women prison. I meet women who can't read, can't write, and I just feel like
Missed out on
childhood,
those bare essentials that we.
without sounding very judgmental, but what kind of parents did you have? And oh my God, how grateful am I to have been born to the parents
it makes
that I had.
So how lucky
It gives
you
you
are
gratitude.
in that circumstance.
It makes you feel grateful
That's good, isn't it?
for your
Absolutely.
life.
You're getting to choose to do it, and it's creating some real positive internal feedback, which
For them and for me, actually.
It's hard to
it's
get.
just as good for me.
Yeah.
Really good.
Right. So on this podcast, we like to talk about successes and also failures along the journey. So to start with success, we want to know what's something you're most proud of in your journey, and then also we want to know some challenges. What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced?
Okay, absolutely. So I think what I'm really proud of is that. So I am where I am, okay, and other people are doing better, and that's all great. But in that journey, I've never felt that I've done anything that I'm ashamed of, or that I would need to hide or couldn't talk to my children about.
Yeah.
So I think my integrity is intact. I can sleep at night, and I think that's what I'm proudest of.
That's a really,
Nice,
really
cracking.
good one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
to
a
be
really,
fair,
really
yeah.
good one.
Yeah.
For the first half.
Because we do
Yeah.
we do talk about it in property all the time, because there are some flaky, untrustworthy people, and
Yeah,
you
there
sort
are,
of think, how can they sleep
you
with
sleep?
themselves? How can they do that? Why would do that to people? And we just like to think that all the time we're trustworthy, reliable, and
Yeah.
things like that. And it's really, really important. So
well, you are, guys, because there's been stuff that we could talk about later that hasn't gone to plan. But I've always felt
which
like
happens.
you two have been there, and and you've been supporting and helping still. So, but that's important, isn't it? Because that's your reputation.
Absolutely,
I'm
yeah.
not talking specifically about
Yes.
you two, but anyone. That's
That's
what your children look at you, and if there's something I can't,
you
tell
want to
them,
be a role model to your
Yeah.
children. You want to be able to sleep at night and be satisfied in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And B, you don't want to let other people down.
No,
No,
just
that's
want to
it.
be a decent person. I mean, that sounds a little, but to me, that's important. And to me, I'm proud of that.
Yeah, that is really,
I
really
can
good.
tell
That's
my
really high
children.
value for our listeners, I think.
Yeah, that I did this, but I didn't have to, stab someone in the back intentionally or unintentionally to do it.
Yeah, no. It's great.
Not when I acquired my practices, not when I worked in practice, not now. I've not felt the need to, I never have, I wouldn't do it, and I haven't done it.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of that.
Challenges.
And then some
Oh,
challenges.
yeah, challenges. So, do your due diligence so this has kind of been my second foray into property. About 10 years ago, I did went into a JV with a couple of unscrupulous people,
Right.
and I lost a lot of money and
Snap.
impacted on my mental health. That is a challenge, and so for me, my challenge always is mindset. What came out of that there's always a learning, isn't there? So now I kind of tend to trust people very easily, but I've learned to put checks and balances into place. So always do your due diligence. I mean, you and
So
I
trust, but then do your checks
Absolutely.
and balances at the same time.
I don't want to be.
Don't turn your back at everyone.
No,
but-
I don't want to be cynical.
Yeah.
That's not a nice way to lead your life.
Yeah.
I want to be trusting. I do trust people still, but I still now would absolutely 110% say do your due diligence. So I'm going to give an example if you don't mind. We've JV'd
Absolutely, yeah.
that property that we flipped, Tim.
Yes.
But I bought that property with my cash, so I insisted that property was held in my company, and
Yes.
you had a deed of assignment.
Yeah, we had what's called a declaration.
Oh, sorry,
of trust.
declaration of trust. So that obviously, the profits would go to Tim, or we split
the profits, basically. Yeah.
But I was very, very robust in saying to you, no, that's going to be held in my company because that's my asset that I bought. And maybe a few years ago, I wouldn't have been so vocal or insistent on that. So that's just a very, very small check that anyone out there can put into place. So don't be cynical in life.
But don't forget, that's probably in that circumstance, that's a win-win really at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because, I've got other businesses property and I've got personal guarantees and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it worked for me and it worked for you in
Yeah.
that circumstance. So
Yeah, but what I'm saying to people is be cautious, be careful. I mean, I'm a risk taker, but take measured risk. But don't lead your life with cynicism because that's not a nice.
Could you give some examples of checks you might do on someone in a circumstance like that?
I mean, you can go into company's house and check for stuff, but if there's someone who's really bent on doing you out of money, unless you're a real shyster yourself, it probably is going to happen to you. Probably.
Yeah.
But at least you can then look back and say, I did do as much checking. So that's a really simple check, isn't it? Company's house. Are they sold?
Yeah.
And how many? Just looking at the trail of businesses that they have. But
I always think just a general good one, and obviously a lot of people do it these days, is the Google check, the social media check.
yeah,
Just general,
yeah.
references or asking other people in the industry and things like that.
Or for example, when you and I JV'd, I'm pretty sure we have a relationship, but I'm pretty sure I spoke to other people who'd invested with you. So I insisted on that. And in as much as you can check anything, that's what you need to do, But ultimately, you've got to trust people, haven't you? But with a dose of thinking.
You've got to be optimistic and positive
Always.
and have a positive outlook on life.
Yeah.
But
Things
do
can go
the checks
wrong.
and balances.
Oh, things can always go wrong.
Things can go wrong.
But it's the
Understand-
intention. It's what was the intention.
That's it.
And
Was
understand
someone-
what the risks are.
Yeah. Was someone intending to defraud you?
Yeah,
or did
exactly.
things just go a bit pear-shaped?
Yeah.
Because I've had fraud.
Yeah,
right?
we
So
know.
so I've had a fraud case where I've been defrauded of funds, and it was intentional. It was intentional.
Yeah.
It was intentional. Someone had stolen money from an organisation that I was director of, and that had to be liquidated due to the fraud, and it's still going through the courts.
Yeah,
and so on and so
yeah.
forth.
Well, you've spoken about it.
Yeah, of course it. Yeah, and that is the big difference, in my opinion, is that things can go wrong in life and in business, and that doesn't mean that person has done something necessarily wrong. Markets change, conditions change, values change, everything can change. But if somebody has set out to deliberately defraud somebody,
that's intentional.
that is different, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. That's unforgivable.
Yeah, people can get in trouble.
Of course.
One of the risks that we have in developments is building
Builders.
contractors.
Yeah.
Builders.
Oh, yeah.
And
Going bump.
there are some builders who go
bump in the
who
night.
are doing
Yeah.
trying their best to do the right thing, and that happens unfortunately. But there are some out there who do take funds fraudulently and move on to the next person.
Yeah, so that JV that I did 10 years ago was exactly that situation.
Right.
I bought a plot of land with planning, and then I was foolish, never visited it, didn't get a QS involved, kept paying money to these people who were saying they were building houses on there. Lo and behold, they weren't building houses on there.
Wow.
The only saving grace was that plot of land with the planning was in my company name, and so I could then sell it.
You could sell the land.
I sold the land, but obviously didn't recoup the money that I'd paid them for doing the building work that never materialised. But what did I learn from that? Well, I was foolish in the sense that although I knew them, I should have had a QS involved. I should have had an independent person, so that if they were asking me for 30 grand, he goes out and checks, or he or she checks, and then there's drawdown of funds. So, but I learned.
Yeah.
I learned. It didn't kill me. It was painful. I felt foolish, as we all do when these things happen. But you live to.
I was embarrassed.
You live in. I was embarrassed. Yeah.
You know, it was something I was massively embarrassed about it, because
you live another day.
but you do, you absolutely, and you can't go through life as a cynic. You can't.
No.
You have to.
It's not a nice place to be.
You said, it's horrible at the time.
Yeah.
Massively
But then
horrible.
you reflect on it and learn from it, and that actually, in the long term, will bring you further forward. Because like when you go into the next joint venture and the next deal you're doing,
I now know more. I now know what I.
Because I remember actually, you did ask. Even when we first, we did some work together, mentoring and stuff like that. There's lots of questions you asked. You were quite detailed. I'm like, I thought you were quite on the ball considering you hadn't done a lot of property, but maybe that's a lot of the learnings from that.
Yeah, it's life. It does things and throws things, and I'm not the best at this, but you have to become resilient. I'm not the best at this. I'm still working on it. But it's not just about property. In the whole of your life, stuff happens you can't control. You have to be resilient, don't you?
Yeah. And I think one of our previous guests said it's not really, failure is not really a term. It's just there's a challenge, there's a learning, and then there's the reflection and moving on, basically. So
There's winning and there's learning.
Winning and learning, that's the one. Yeah.
So I hope that's helped people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
To learn of stuff.
No, that's great. And we do want real life challenges that people face
yeah.
on this podcast, because, it really is good for people to hear and learn that
not
everything's always.
No, there's
like
not always an upward
shows,
trajectory. It's not the sunny high uplands or whatever. There's all sorts of shit along the way. Excuse my French. Yeah. And also, I think in property and in most walks of life, if you've not lost money or if something hasn't gone wrong, you've either, in my now thinking back, you've either not done it long enough.
Yes.
Or you're lying.
Yeah.
You've either never taken a risk.
Or you've never taken a risk.
That's a really good point, actually, because I say that because I've been involved in a lot of development, a lot of building projects, and I do think most things that could have gone wrong have gone wrong at some point.
Yeah, well, there you go.
And I think like one of the positives of that is all of those things that have gone wrong have been big learnings that have been brought forward as experience.
Yeah.
So whoever you're working with has the benefit of that
experience.
17, 18 years of that shit, basically.
Yeah.
Like you said before, so far over it.
Yeah.
Right, so moving forward from that then.
I'm really enjoying this.
It's
Are you
great,
guys?
isn't it?
No, you've opened up really well.
Yeah, really good, really good. So then moving forward, what's the best bit of advice you've been given by someone else, or something you've learned from someone else?
So the best bit of advice in life, and this is very pertinent to me because I'm such a control freak and I really struggle with being rigid. Again, I'm having therapy, guys, okay? It's an ongoing issue, ongoing battle. And when things don't go my way, I do find it difficult. However, you cannot control everything in your life, but you can control your reaction to it.
Yeah.
I have to constantly work on this. We've had
I've had problems with this as well over time. So
you guys know that we've had this planning issue. And sometimes we'll talk about it. I have something else to cover on it, but we'll talk about that later. But I perhaps could have reacted better to it. And maybe I didn't, but at least I recognize that in myself, and I'm really trying. I'm trying to work on that. You have to be brave. You have to be resilient. And can I just tell you something? Can I just talk about this? I recently watched the documentary about Rob Burrows, the rugby league player.
Yes. Yes.
So emotional. But these are his words.
What was that? What platform was that on?
I watched it on BBC iPlayer. Yeah. If you don't mind, I want to share his words because I think these are life lessons. So, and these are his words: whatever your personal battle, be brave and face it. And this makes me cry because I think, wow, what a man. Every single day is precious. Don't waste a moment. And in a world full of adversity, we must still dare to dream. And I just think we all have our personal battles.
So Rob Burrow, I'm going to talk about Rob Burrow for a second because now you brought him up. You're going to set me off. So he was a hero of mine before he became sick.
Yeah. Right. And the reason I took my mum has a neurological, thankfully nothing this bad. And I see her battles and her bravery. And in our own way, we've all got stories. We've all had stuff happen personally. I don't want to bring yours up, Tim, unless you want to. But
I don't like talking about these sort of things.
I do actually, because I think this is how human beings relate to each other. We're all human beings.
And one of my things, I should be able to talk about it more, but I do struggle with those sort of things.
But don't. I mean, my father died very young. I have huge issues still around that. I'm still working on that. My mum has Parkinson's. I don't mind sharing that. So my financial freedom is also allowing me now to spend time with her while she's still able to do stuff.
Yeah.
And then you see something like this happen to a young person, and the bravery with which they face their life makes me sometimes a bit ashamed of the fact that I'm not brave enough. And how admirable. So that's why I wanted just to share that, because I watched that a few weeks ago. And those, we bandy these words inspirational around, but someone who's facing his mortality with a horrible condition like that, for him to say to us, we must still dare to dream.
The freedom point you raised there is interesting, because I won't go into detail of my circumstance, but there are times where I've had to travel back home to my Australia because of health conditions with family and things like that. But just having that freedom that you can just book a plane and jump on it and not have to worry about it is,
someone about a job.
to me, that's a really big freedom.
Massively.
So again, that's time, money related, but some of those things are really, really important.
And sorry, we interrupted you.
No, just on that Rob Burrow point, which is he was a hero of mine before he was sick, right? So, and you don't just learn heart overnight, right? So this guy was the smallest man on the pitch.
Wow, he's
rugby
tiny,
league.
isn't
He was so small. Like we used to be a joke about it, because Leeds Rhinos were going through this team time where they were like the Manchester United of the rugby league world at the time in the 90s. They were just winning everything, and I went to the grand final for most years as I'd helped set up a part of the culture of rugby league club.
Right, yeah.
So rugby league was part of what I part of my thing, and you used to joke about it that the camera used to pan to the players and then had to dip
for him,
for Rob because he was so small in stature, but you would not be able to tell.
No,
because the way he played, you mean?
The way he played, the way he tackled, the way he broke the line, the way that he just brought things to the front. He was just an inspiration. And the crowd, whenever he got the ball, you could tell. Because the crowd would either still or go noisy, and it takes a certain heart to be able to affect that many people. And I was there at the grand final when he scored the try that people talk about, which is he took the ball to the line, took on 3 people and ran 60 yards to help his side win the grand final. It was unbelievable, still the greatest try I've ever seen. And he wouldn't have been, the thing is, he wouldn't have been able to have scored that try if he was bigger, because he ducked under 2 tackles. So it's just, again, it just goes to show that you might be given challenges, but it's how you adapt to those challenges and how you can use them to your advantage, really.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting to hear that, because when you were talking before, actually, Sobia, you were talking before about the your life and your day, right? And it just sounds lovely to me, right? It sounds like what a lovely day. And then you say, but I am having therapy. And it just goes to show, I won't ask you about that, but because I've had the same, right? I've just graduated from my most recent therapy, but I've had the same, which is, and I just think that sometimes that is a taboo subject that people don't talk about.
I'm really more than happy to talk about it because it's so important. I mean, I'm not going to bore people, but and I'm sorry I interrupted.
No, the reason I bring it up is because people think that once you get to this position that you're in, it's all gravy. It's not. Everything's a challenge. Happiness you have to work on. Your health is to get fitter, you have to work on your physical health. To get mentally fitter, you have to work
on that,
right?
Definitely. And like I say, I had a milestone birthday, and I thought it would be amazing. And actually, I've had a really difficult year because of all the things, time, finite, running out of it. What have I done? Seeing my mum, who's becoming a bit worse with her condition. It's not easy. It's actually really difficult seeing your parents become old. It's a real blessing to have parents who become old, but to see that sort of change in them, I'm finding that challenging. So I think don't look at someone's life and judge it by the outside. You don't know what they've been through, what they're going through, and what's happening in their head.
The challenges, setbacks along the way, and the mind challenges as well.
It's a big important thing. Your mind can free you and let you dream all these things, but it can be a real prison. And that's, there's nothing wrong with talking about your mental health, folks. It's important.
Well, it's the thing that I wrote down, which is that if you struggle because I don't believe we're supposed to do nothing, right? And sometimes people think that freedom is I can just sit on a chair all day, and that is terrible, right?
Yeah,
you don't want to
that
do that.
would be for me. Yeah.
So I just came up with like if you struggle but with purpose, then you're going to be living well.
Yeah.
But if you struggle without purpose, you're going to be dying.
Yeah.
Inside.
You drop away very quickly.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's the difference is when somebody retires and they don't have a purpose versus somebody retires and they do have a purpose. I think they're very different things.
Completely agree.
Anyway, there's my new quote that I'm going to sign off, by the way.
Right, that was
cool. There we go. It's deep, wasn't it? Bloody hell.
that was deep. Yeah.
That's what happens.
Financial freedom.
That's what happens when you get a woman on the show. Finally,
That's
There you
it.
go.
Well,
Make
great,
it
great.
open up.
It's a great story and great content. Right, so that's our main 6 rounds done. But our last 2 rounds that we finish on is first we've got a question from a previous guest. So I'll read that out to you, and then we'll follow on where you should have prepared a question for both myself and Phil. Great, excellent. So the question from our previous guest is: if you could go back in time, is there anything you would change in your journey to financial freedom?
Okay, so this is actually something that I didn't useful to have it as a question, but I go over this in my head all the time, and I sometimes really beat myself up and think, God, why didn't I just start this 10 years earlier? Why didn't I just start it earlier? But you have to come to peace with the fact that everything happens at exactly the right time. You have to understand that and accept that. So I would have to say there's always a part of my brain that says, I wish I'd done this earlier. I wish I'd done it earlier, but I didn't. It's happening now. Accept it and just live with that and move on. So no, I think.
So is advice being at peace with where you're at, or is it if you can change things, do it earlier, do it?
No, my advice is, do it as early as you can. But if you haven't, just accept it.
There's no
you
point
can't
dwelling
turn
on
the
it,
bloody.
is it?
Well, no, although I will, because that's just my mind. My mind will go on.
Everyone does the same. I did the same.
Yeah.
I wish I'd done that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Everyone's the same.
Yeah.
But,
We've only had one guest that couldn't have started property earlier. That's Finn at 18.
Because he would have
you
been
physically
8.
can't buy it.
Couldn't have
Because
legally
he would have
bought
been a
anything
baby.
earlier.
Yeah, I know Finn, by the way. So I'm glad he's doing well. That would be the only thing. Start it as early as you actually can, but don't beat yourself up about it. And like I've just said, everything you are where you are now because of all the cumulative things
everything that's happened before.
to you.
Yeah,
that's life.
Lovely.
Yeah.
excellent.
Okay, guys.
What have you got for us?
Okay, right. So Tim, shall I ask you first? What would be the one, and I know this is really difficult because there's so much you want to tell your children, so much I want to tell my children, but what would be your one piece of advice to your children about life? Which this is a really big question because life is a really big thing.
Yes, very, very hard to narrow it down to one specific piece of advice. But I think for me, the last 12 months, what I've really focused on personally is, it's a bit to do with time, but it's just enjoying the journey. Because as property investors and entrepreneurs in business, you're always looking at a goal. I'll get to that goal, and that's the top of the mountain.
It's not.
But then you get to the top of the mountain, and then you look ahead, there's another mountain, and it keeps going like that. So I've got a young family, and I made a big rule last year that although I'm growing these businesses, I want to spend X amount of time with them, like we've talked about with time. So I've tried to be really just with that, and then it's enjoying that journey and creating nice memories with them. And it's taken me to this point in my life to think like they're really, really important. So it's enjoying that journey all the time. Always have goals and targets, but the process and the journey involved in it sometimes is more important because it's like how you learn and grow during that time that really changes your life.
That's what tests your mettle as a human being, isn't it? That's what makes you aware of what you're capable of.
So some people say it's like, let's say, becoming a millionaire. It's not about becoming a millionaire or the money. It's just about what you had to do or the process you had to go to get to that point, or like getting 1 million followers or something like that. What did you have to do to get to that point, and the journey involved in that and the learnings involved. So to me, it's just enjoy the journey, enjoy the process, but still have goals and targets. Enjoy your family and your children at all times.
They grow up very quickly.
When you can,
I have an 18-year-old, soon to be 18, and a 16-year-old, and I do not know. Again, this podcast is full of cliches. I do not know where those 18 years went.
Yeah, of course. Time
Yeah.
passes so quickly.
Yeah.
Actually, I talked to someone last week and they were saying, I think their kids are like maybe 14, 15. He's like, I've got a few years. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, no, these are the years I've really got it. Because once they hit 18 and they're off at uni and moving out, like you do see less of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've set up a reminder on my phone, which is for next June, which sounds random, right? But it is and it just says, enjoy the summer. You've only got 40 left.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, there you go.
God.
So, because sometimes you can think, oh, well, I'm just going to work or whatever and that kind of stuff. And really, you want to be out and about. It's summertime, right?
Absolutely.
Anyway.
No, great question. Thank you.
No problem. Right. My question for you, Phil. If you could have a conversation for 30 minutes, and I had to put a time limit on this because I know you like to talk.
Yeah.
30 minutes with any person, alive or dead, famous or not, who, because I know who my person is, who would that person be and why?
So, there's...
Anyway.
You told me that you were going to ask this, and I think I've changed my mind.
Okay.
So there's a number of people who immediately jump to mind. There's the creators of the world like Walt Disney. I'd love to talk to Walt Disney, and then there's the stoics of the world like the Queen. I'd love to have a sit down, 30-minute conversation with the Queen, all the adventures that she'd been through. But I guess because of where I am currently, right here, right now, one of my favorite things that I do, and I listen to this probably once a quarter, is it's called The Art of Exceptional Living, which is an audio book.
Right.
And it's by an author called Jim Rohn.
Okay.
And Jim Rohn is really the father of everything that we do and live today in terms of investing.
All right.
So if you were to ask any of the current people, so if you asked Simon Zucci, Dan Hill, Rob Moore, who their top influencers are, Jim Rohn would be in there.
Okay.
And yet he's relatively unknown.
Yeah, I've not
right?
heard of him.
So, but
Definitely
tip?
Dan Hill. I have through
Dan Hill.
through Dan Hill's
Okay.
network. And
Okay.
I read the book. But
Okay.
Phil said I have to listen to the audio.
Okay,
but
right.
It's an amazing book.
Okay.
So I'm going to pick two people because I've changed my mind.
Yeah.
So Jim Rohn's one of them,
Right.
Because and what I would say is I can't do that, but what I can do is I can go and listen to his book. So you can
Right.
buy the book,
Yeah.
which is The Art of Exceptional Living, which is exceptional
I'll have
read.
to.
But it's the
Okay.
only book I've ever been disappointed with
Right.
because I read it before I listened to it.
Okay.
Because the listening to it is a collection of his talks. It's the book, but it's a collection of his
Okay.
talks. It's him talking.
Okay.
And the inspiration that comes from him talking. So listen to it is
Okay.
my advice.
Wow.
And the other person I would love to have 30 minutes with is Marcus Aurelius,
Oh, wow.
the Roman general, right?
Okay.
Which might sound a bit random,
Yeah.
because this was a person that was invading countries, taking military power, going towards leading the Roman Empire, and yet he was a Stoic.
Okay.
He believed in he referred to Seneca, who was a slave,
Yeah.
as one of his teachers and one of the main people in the world. I would love to understand how a Roman general with all of the power and all
Could
of
have
the
that.
things
Yeah.
could still have the mindset
Humanity.
of, it doesn't matter what happens to you, all that matters is your decisions and how you react and, to control your emotions. Because I'm a big fan of Stoicism. And I always think to myself, out of everybody, there's this guy who was the top of
man.
the tree.
Yeah.
He is the man.
Yeah.
How did he still live in a way that was, bringing him back down to earth? Make sure that at the end of every day he journaled to make sure he didn't get ahead of himself. That's
Did
what I would
Finn
say.
raise him in the podcast as he struggled
I
with
don't know.
mental health maybe, and he
Finn.
I don't know,
he
actually.
brought him up
Okay.
saying that
I
he
don't remember
struggled.
that.
He struggled
Okay.
to get himself moving,
Yeah.
get out of bed sometimes, and things like that. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like if he can struggle with it, then it's
yeah.
okay for me to struggle with it.
Am I allowed to ask another question? Because I think that's such a good question.
Right. Okay.
We're all about high value content on this.
No, I
podcast,
think
so
I've asked you a
absolutely.
really brilliant question there, actually.
Yeah.
What about your 30 minutes?
Oh, you've.
I can tell you mine very easily. I
Go
don't
for it.
think
You
about
you
mine.
do yours, and I'll.
Mine is a very simple thing. My dad,
Oh, of course.
greatest person, greatest man, inspirational, a humble and modest human being who is still talked of very highly, who I miss still.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Died more than 20 years ago, too young. But what a man, what a story. I'm not going to cry,
No.
but I didn't even need to think about that.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the open conversations
Yeah,
and the
no,
great
no.
content. So thanks
You're
for coming
welcome.
along.
No, thank you for inviting me.
We'll see you in the next one.
See you on the next one.
Absolutely.
Thanks
Okay.
very much.
Bye for now. Thank you once again for joining us on the Financial Freedom Podcast, sponsored by us at Property Portfolio Building. If you want to get in touch with us about today's podcast or any of the learning topics that we've gone through today, you can email us at podcast@invest-prop.co.uk or get in touch with us with whichever your social media platform of choice is. If you think you would add value to us as a guest on this podcast, you can please get in touch and let us know what you would be able to talk to us about. Other than that, we wish you well on your financial freedom journeys. And once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.